and thank you for joining us this morning. I'm going to ask Mr. Masson if he would like to take us through some housekeeping before we start the agenda proper. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a reminder that the meeting is open to the press and public and will be recorded and appear on the Council's website soon after. Members of the committee and officers should switch their cameras on but switch off their microphones until they wish to speak. All those observing today's proceedings should have their cameras and microphones switched off at all times. I will now ask my colleague Gogo to start the recording, and I will undertake a roll call to identify those in attendance. Councillor Ian Yule.
Present.
Councillor Christian Allard.
Present, good morning.
Councillor Gillian Owen.
Present.
Councillor Gwyneth Petrie.
Here.
We know that Councillor Anne Stirling's here.
Present.
Professor George Boyne, is he in attendance?
Present, good morning.
Jennifer Craw.
I am in attendance, but I'm not able to stay for the whole meeting, so I'm here for a short period only. And Stanley Morris is here as a substitute.
Okay. And Sir Ian Wood.
Present.
Thank you. I'll now hand back to the Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Masson. There's been no indication of any urgent business, so we don't have any to consider. But there is an exempt item, so it'd be my intention to take item 13 in private with public and press excluded. If you don't agree with that, if you can put your hand up and I'll bring you in. That's agreed. Thank you very much. Can I ask members, please, if you have any declarations of interest or transparency statements? Mr. Masson.
Sorry, apologies. I should have mentioned the apologies that we have had today and who's going to be attending in their place. So I've received an apology from Councillor Radley, and we have Councillor McClellan in her place, and we've got an apology for Alan Wood as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's fine. Thank you. And we'll mark Stanley Morris as a substitute attending as well. So that's fine. Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest or transparency statements, please? Councillor Owen, thank you.
Yeah, just the normal transparency statement that I make by being a member of the Opportunity North East Board, but having applied the objective test, I've concluded that I do not have an interest to declare and will remain in that meeting. Thank you very much. It's just the normal one that I do.
Thank you very much. Mr. Morris, please.
I can advise that myself, Sir Ian Wood, Jennifer Craw and Professor George Boyne have a connection to any issue affecting Opportunity North East, in particular matters relating to the food hub, Bio Aberdeen and Energy Transition Zone, which may arise during this meeting. By virtue of us being board members of one, Bio Aberdeen Limited and Food Hub, Nest Limited and ETZ. Having applied the objective test, we do not consider that we have an interest to declare and will not be withdrawing from the meeting because in practice, funding is allocated by agreement with government and in line with the tripartite agreement.
That's fine. Thank you very much. And those will be recorded. Councillor Allard, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The same transparency statement by Councillor Owen as being appointed by Council on the board of one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Yule, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's going on just not to speak about the transparency statement in relation to item 10 as a member of the Nest Trans board. The objective test, I don't believe it's necessary to withdraw.
Okay, thank you very much, and those will all be recorded in the minute. Thank you. If we can turn then to item 5 on your pack, which is the minute of the previous meeting of the 6th of September 2024, and that's on pages 3 to 8. Mr. Bewes, I think you have updates to share with the committee. I'll just ask you, and then we'll move to members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of actions from the last joint committee, we were asked to bring back a report to update members on progress on the internal audit report. We've got that on the agenda today at item 8. And we were also instructed to send a letter to Kate Forbes following the emergency spending controls and the decision to pause access to the digital MOU funding. So we sent that letter and are just awaiting a response.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions on the minute? No indication, so can we agree please that that is a correct record and those minutes would be approved? If you don't agree, then please indicate and I'll bring you in. So those minutes are agreed, so that's an approved minute. Thank you very much indeed. That takes us then to item 6 on our agenda, which is the dashboard. It's the quarterly update of the CRD dashboard and the run from pages 9 to 36 in your pack. So again, the recommendations on page 9 are to note the contents of the quarterly programme dashboard and approve the joint committee meeting dates for 2025-26 as the 9th of May, 12th of September, 7th of November and the 13th of February 2026. So those are the recommendations, but I'll turn to either Mr. Buse and or Mr. McCarry, please. Mr. Buse, do you want to introduce the report?
Thanks, Chair. We've changed the template and the way that we report this a little while ago, and I think as we continue to progress through it, it's really helpful in being able to flag up any risks or issues to the joint committee. There is one red issue flagged up within the dashboard, and within that, I think it's on page 18 of the pack. Within that, the issue there is something that we touched upon in the last meeting, and we've taken an action to try and address, and that is the decision of the Scottish Government to pause access to the MOU digital infrastructure funding. So whilst that sits at a red at the moment, we've raised that issue to the joint committee and we've taken an action to try and mitigate that. So any progress we make on that will report back to the joint committee. In terms of the other risks and issues that we flag up on there, what we're looking to do through the joint committee is bring forward a number of reports to the joint committee to help give you the assurance that those risks and issues are being mitigated as much as possible. So on the agenda today, we have reports from Net Zero Technology Centre, from Strategic Transport and from external transport links to Aberdeen South Harbour. So again, that will give members further assurance and the opportunity to scrutinise those projects, making sure that the risk and issues that we flag up on the dashboard are fully addressed. Beyond that, I think welcome any questions on any of the individual projects and also in terms of the template that we've used, which hopefully I think will be giving members the level of assurance that they would like in terms of these quarterly updates on project progress.
Thank you, Mr. Buse. Mr. McCarry, do you want to add anything?
Thanks, Chair. No, but as Stuart says, happy to take any questions that members have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, can you please indicate and I'll bring you in if you have any questions or comments on this report? I don't see any indications. One last call. Oh, sorry, Stuart. Mr. Buse.
Apologies, Chair. There was one other thing I meant to add, which was we spoke previously at the last joint committee, I believe, that the Scottish Parliament's Fair Work and Economy Committee were undertaking an inquiry into city and growth deals. They've reached out recently and asked for a member of Aberdeen City Region deal to give evidence to the committee on the 4th of December. The remit of that is more around the mature deals and the progress that they've made, the learnings that they've had in and around governance processes and so on. So we discussed this at programme board and it was agreed that I would go to that session and give evidence to the committee. The expectation that we have based on the questions that they made in their inquiry, a number of those are addressing businesses and how businesses have been able to benefit from the deal and so on. So my expectation is that whilst I'm going on the 4th of December to give evidence from an administrative, if you like, perspective, we anticipate that there will be further sessions where they'll be looking for wider input from other stakeholders.
Okay, thank you for that update. And I presume you will keep in touch with your colleagues for input into any preparation that you are taking forward for that session. Yep, thanks, Mr. Buse. Sir Ian, did you want to come in?
Yes, I just going to make the obvious point that there's 30 odd pages here. And that's a huge number of pages to be absorbed. And frankly, I mean, have I absorbed them? No, I've partly absorbed them, I guess, is where we are. And that's probably true with other people. I don't know what we do, because I think we're at a stage where we're now looking at papers where it just isn't reasonable to say, yeah, I've read all these and I've approved them.
So would it be helpful if we asked if we can have an executive summary attached to reports, pulling out the main issues?
It would help if there was a focus on the key issues.
Yeah.
And there are a number of key issues. If there's a focus on a number of key issues, that would be helpful.
So is that something, Mr. Buse, that you could take off table, and perhaps for the next set of papers have a one-page executive summary just focusing on those key issues, so that members are pulled to those particular points and they can follow those up?
Yeah, we could certainly try to do that.
Can try to do that.
I think just in terms of the balance, I appreciate it is a significant amount of information. Where we've taken this approach from largely follows on from that internal audit, which, you know, some of the findings within that was, do members have full oversight as they're required to do within the remit of the joint committee, full oversight of what's going on. So it is a really tricky balance. I take on board the point around a high amount of information, and if it's helpful for us to do an executive summary that kind of pinpoints to those key risks and issues, then yeah, happy to do that.
We would still have the volume of paperwork, as you suggest, and internal audit has pointed us in that direction. But if there was an additional page, one page, just pulling out the key aspects of it, highlighting the key issues, then members could read that in more detail. But then they're able then to follow that through in the rest of the paperwork. So it'll be up to members then. If you're presenting the information, it's up to members then to deal with that information in the best way that they feel able to do, but that the main issues of risk, as you say, and other aspects are highlighted for their attention. So you're not taking away any of the ability to have the information before us. It's just some key points on an executive page, if that's okay. We can give it we can try it out, see how it goes, if that's okay. So, Serene, would that be helpful?
Yes, it would, but I'd like to see it. And
Sure,
see
then.
what it looks like.
Yeah. So maybe do if you've got the capacity, Mr. Buse, just to maybe retrospectively do an executive summary on item 6 and send it around members for comment. Yeah. And we can do it that way before you start to do it for all the papers. Could we agree that then? Okay, thank you very much. So I don't see any other indications that members have any questions or comments on this item. So the recommendations, as I said, are on page 9. So can we agree those, please? Those are agreed. Okay, item 7 is a presentation on digital connectivity, and this is the first 5G development, and it's phase 1, and it's Huntly. So can I hand over now, please, to officers to give us the presentation? Thank you. Who's presenting?
Chair, that would be George Noble. I can see he's on the screen, but he may be on mute at the moment.
Just taking a moment just to get the...
You hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Right, I'll just try and just share my screen. So thank you for the kind introduction, and it's a delight to be here to share more about our Huntly 5G project. Get the technology to work.
While we're doing that, Mr. Masson, can we circulate the presentation to members after the meeting?
Yes, I could do that.
Thank you.
Some technology challenges, apologies.
George, if you're having issues, I could actually share the screen and you could just tell me to move on when you can't.
If you could, that'd be really useful. I think I've got too many monitors and it's not being very agreeable there, so that would be much appreciated.
Could we all see that? Is that too small or?
I can see if you could go to like full screen, if you could share it, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find. I'm not one that usually does slides. Where's full screen? You.
If you go down to the bottom above your microphone icon, you'll see the presentation icon. Up.
Up. Window.
There you go. Perfect. Okay, so everyone can hear me. Thank you for the invitation to come here today. It's great to be here to present the Huntly 5G project. My name is George Noble. I work for an organisation called SOS. So for those of you who don't know who SOS are, it stands for Scottish Agricultural Organisation Society. So we've been about just over 100 years supporting rural and agricultural cooperation within Scotland. We're a co-op ourselves. We're owned by approximately 55 of our member co-ops, which together turn over about 1.5 billion. So really the kind of engine room of kind of rural Scotland. Also within the Huntly area, we have a subsidiary business called Scott EID that operates all of the livestock traceability systems in partnership with Scottish Government and the Scottish livestock industry. So go next slide, please. So the Huntly 5G project is a £1.5 million rural digital connectivity project that is funded through the Aberdeen City Region deal. We've been on the go now for almost a year. The project commenced November 2023. And the aim of the project is to provide an investment in 5G and other wireless technology infrastructure to help explore innovative applications that the use of this technology could bring to rural areas such as Huntly. And importantly, to help build a repeatable model that we can take and bring to other rural communities, both in Aberdeenshire and indeed across Scotland, to allow them to adopt. So next slide, please. In terms of the project objectives, it kind of roughly breaks down into three areas that you can see on the screen here. Firstly, the provision of enhanced connectivity into the region, and that includes additional 5G network provision, so both private 5G for the use of SOS and Scott EID and looking towards developing innovative applications using 5G technology, to engage with the mobile network operators to see if they can bring forward enhanced public 5G provision within the kind of rural areas and understand some of the obstacles surrounding that, and to support all that and the different use cases that could be enabled within the area, you know, additional fibre provision to support backhaul to the internet. The second area was looking at the development of a number of mandatory use cases within the project, so looking at environmental control and what we can do using technology to improve the situation on farms and the agricultural community using these technologies, and also look at a number of optional use cases that may benefit the region, notably in transport provision, tourism, or the delivery of community service such as health, education, and community safety. So next slide, please. So looking at the project area, we're looking at roughly Huntly and 7 miles, notionally 7 miles surroundings, so almost up to the edge of Moray. Also incorporating the River Devon, the River Bogie, and a complex set of topography, which obviously presents substantial challenges in terms of the delivery of some of the kind of connectivity infrastructure. So quite reflective of some of the challenges that may be faced in other areas of rural Scotland. Next slide, please. So the first area we looked at was what we could do to improve regional connectivity. So next slide, please. And the first thing we did was we looked at what the baseline scenario is within the project area. So we commissioned a report from a company called Farpoint, greatly experienced telecoms consultancy, to look at what the kind of current state of play was with respect to both mobile and fixed connectivity infrastructure. So this allowed us to gain a quite granular understanding with respect to where the areas of very good connectivity within the project were and where there were kind of key deficiencies. So we can understand when we're deploying any solutions within the area, where we could have meaningful impact and where there were going to be substantial challenges. Next slide, please. And in terms of moving things forward, we undertook an extensive program of stakeholder engagement, which included, engagement with Huntly Development Trust, Huntly Farmers Market, and the wider public as a whole. So we attended the Huntly Hearst Festival, which is kind of very well attended. And we sought feedback from all these stakeholders and different organisations with respect to, you know, how could we move the needle with respect to connectivity. One of the things that came up fairly early in conversations was a desire to have a fast public Wi-Fi within the network within the Huntly Square. This was really to help support market traders who were struggling with connectivity, Farmers Market Day, and to also potentially attract greater footfall within the town, help support the economy. So we've been going through the process of getting connectivity in place, and the network went live 2 weeks ago. It's not available to the public yet, but once we've completed the process of testing, that will then be made available to the public. The devices that we procured as part of the network, they also allow us to enable things like smart town functionality, so we can begin to understand things like footfall monitoring within the town centre. So we can begin to build various bits of functionality on top of this public Wi-Fi network. Next slide, please. We also looked at what we call next generation fixed wireless access technology. So obviously connecting deeply rural areas is a kind of real challenge. I'm sure a lot of people here are familiar with you know, how long it taken for some of the deeply rural areas to get decent broadband. And we became aware at the commencement of the project of some new technology from the US that could potentially help resolve this. A technology called Tarana Wireless. It effectively allows us to bring wireless connectivity at near fixed broadband speeds, almost gigabit capable speeds to deeply rural areas. It had not been deployed within the UK at the time of commencing the project. And we thought this would be a really interesting technology to bring to Huntly to demonstrate the potential of this technology to connect deeply rural areas to super fast broadband. Effectively, what the technology promises to do is to actually see around various obstacles like trees and various other obstructions, but at the same time allowing super fast connectivity to be provided. So we procured some test kit from the US. We now have that up and running within Huntly. And what we're seeking to do is to kind of validate the potential of this technology within the envelope of the Huntly project, and to understand and build a business case and understand the economics of how we can take this technology out to different areas of Scotland and potentially accelerate the delivery of super fast broadband to deeply rural areas. So next slide, please. Next one, please. And as discussed, we're also looking at how we can enhance provision of 5G infrastructure within the project area. And to that end, we had an extensive program of engagement with the fixed and mobile telecoms operators to understand what the rollout plans are within the Huntly area, to also understand what the kind of process was for the provision of fixed fibre backhaul and some of the time and cost challenges associated with that. And to that end, as I say, we met with all the mobile network operators to understand their plans. We also engaged with BT Openreach and other fibre providers, and we placed numerous orders for fibre backhaul to help support some of the use cases. And through engagement with two of the mobile network operators, they were able to switch on public 5G many months in advance of plans that they already had in place. So that was really quite positive. Next slide, please. We also procured a private 5G network that is for the use of SOS and ScotEID, looking to really see how this technology can be used to deliver innovative connectivity solutions for rural and agricultural stakeholders, principally on farms. So at the moment, we have got the network up and running. It's being tested within a workshop in Huntly. We've secured the licensing to kind of trial that network, and we're now looking at a range of different use cases to deploy in and around Huntly with some of the agricultural stakeholders. Next slide, please. Next one, please. And one of the mandatory elements that I mentioned at the top of this slide was looking at how we can use some of this technology to improve agricultural and environmental monitoring. So we have within the footprint of the project identified and working with a number of different farms. So looking at how we can take Internet of Things technologies and kind of wireless connectivity to help support and improvement economic outcomes and decision making for farmers within the project area, but also how we can do it also at the same time potentially look how we can improve environmental outcomes. So some of the activities we're looking at on those target farms, looking at how we can bring innovation to farm inspection insurance, how we can use some of this technology to help farmers make better decision making. So you can see the picture there is looking at monitoring of livestock housing environments, providing alerts with respect to temperatures, empty troughs, etc. We're also looking at the development of a simple solution that can help support farmers with respect to the timing of nitrogen applications. So they can apply it only at the time that it's going to be taken up by plants, not washed into water courses. So you can save the farmer money, but you can also protect the environment. And we'll also couple that with water quality monitoring. So next slide, please. Next one, please. And the kind of final area that we're kind of looking at is some of the kind of social applications of this. So I mentioned previously we're engaging with Huntly Development Trust. They have a eco-bothy and like sporting site just to the east of Huntly, and they are keen to look at how they can use technology to develop a more sustainable tourism offering. So we're working with them to develop a number of connected solutions on that site. So looking at monitoring water quality within the sporting loch, been able to look at footfall on the site so they can begin to get a better understanding of kind of usage, and also looking at things like energy monitoring, security solutions, all of which are kind of targeted to helping them improve the visitor experience, but also allow them to manage the site more effectively and support future funding applications. Next slide, please. And finally, we have engaged with 2 housing associations within Huntly. So they have kind of properties within Huntly and the kind of surrounding areas in which they're keen to test some sensing technology using kind of wireless networks, principally to look at how they can monitor properties and get early insights with respect to issues of mold, poor ventilation, and potentially fuel poverty. So we're now in the process of putting in place a wireless network within Huntly to connect sensors, and we're working with those housing associations to connect up to 30 properties at the moment to see how they can more effectively kind of monitor for some of these kind of key challenges that social housing providers are facing at the moment. So where we're at with that project, we've identified the properties, the network infrastructure in place, and over the next few months we should be putting the sensors in and rolling out the visualizations and alerts to the housing associations. So next slide, please. And this is really the final slide I want to leave you with before taking some questions. And this really just shows where we're going in the next phase of the project in terms of the coverage from the various bits of wireless infrastructure we put in place, the farms that we're going to be connecting, and some of the solutions that we're going to be looking to deploy. So I think I'll end there, and happy to take any questions if we've got time.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Noble. That's really a very exciting project, and lots of benefits I'm sure will be accrued. So it'll be good to hear more of the project as it progresses. So that's really fantastic. Thank you very much. Colleagues, do you have any questions for Mr. Noble based on the presentation? Mr. Morris, please. Thank you.
Hi, George. I was not sure whether you know this offhand or not, but is the plan to roll this out right through Scotland at some point? Is it 5G?
I mean, not principally 5G. What we're looking to do here, Stanley, is actually take a model of bottom-up connectivity that we can actually take to any rural area within Scotland and we can deploy. So it's actually more about the model versus the technology. And to that point, even at this kind of early stage in the project, we've had some interest from the south of Scotland, so looking to deploy the kind of Borderlands region, but also up in Orkney. So I think what we're kind of beginning to land upon here is an alternative model of bringing connectivity into a rural area by beginning to kind of stack different use cases that can create a demand pool.
Sorry, is that going to be always public funded, or is the plan to roll that out privately as well? Is it the network companies, or is it just not viable for them?
I think it's going to be unique to each deployment scenario. So there's going to be different pools. So I think in different areas there's going to be more or less public intervention required, but I think it's very site specific. And obviously our hope would be that it would be largely privately funded, but I think there's got to be a recognition there's got to be some public support in some way, shape or form to begin to get things moving. But hopefully it's one of these things that has a bit of a flywheel effect. Once we get some baseline infrastructure in place, hopefully then demand should follow and the private sector should step in and then kind of build upon that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wish to ask any questions or make any comment?
But I'm going to make the same comment I made earlier. It's extremely complex. I mean, we haven't seen, at least I don't think I haven't seen these papers before. And I'm sure they're very good papers, but it's extraordinarily difficult to assimilate them and be able to make good, sensible, medium-term comments. So I don't frankly know what we do about that.
We will, Mr. Marston's going to circulate the slides. And certainly if there's any follow-up questions, I'm sure if we go through officers, they can pass them on to Mr. Noble, if that's okay. And we can certainly do it that way, but you will get the slides. Mr. McCarry, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I think the point Serene is raising is a really pertinent point, in that when we're talking about 5G technology and actually trying to convey in words and in a presentation actually how this works practically and in the field, I think it might be a good idea, George, if you're agreeable to this, is actually setting up a site visit for the Joint Committee, maybe when the weather's better next year sometime, but to actually see the technology in action and actually the improvements that it's making to agricultural practices.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm absolutely delighted to do that. We're happy to kind of host and show members round about the kind of the deployment sites that we've got round about Huntley. So absolutely happy to do that.
And members minded, I see some nods, members minded to do that. Yes, that would be very welcome. So we can do that, but also, as I say, the slides will be circulated. And if you do have any follow-up questions, if you put them through Mr. Buse, then we can get some conversations going through that route as well. So, but thank you for your observation, Serene, and a site visit may well be very beneficial to us all. So thank you for that. We can take that as an action. I don't see any other indications. One last call, please, for any indications. I see none. So in the meantime, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Noble, for that presentation. I think maybe members, when they've had an opportunity to absorb some of that information and can go over the slides, may well come back through Mr. Buse if that's okay with yourself. But certainly a site visit would be most welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that. We move then, colleagues, to item 8 on our agenda, which is the Internal Audit Action Plan update, and that is on pages 37 to 40. And I'm going to ask Mr. Buse to introduce the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Very brief set of recommendations here. We've made some good progress in internal audit, agreeing that we've implemented a number of the recommendations that they set out within their internal audit report. I'm flagging up that there are 2 areas where they're not yet signed off as implemented. The first one is funding agreements. What we've done to that extent is we have issued a variation on all of the grant agreements that we have to make sure that they include, for example, the Scottish Government's Fair Work First criteria, which they only introduced this year, but we've now got those up to date. We've shared those with internal audit. I expect that will be accepted as implemented just in the next probably couple of days. I had hoped that I might be able to tell you today that it had been implemented. I've not heard back from internal audit, but I'm confident that that will meet their expectations. In terms of the expenditure records, we had an action there, I think, to demonstrate to internal audit that we were adequately and appropriately documenting the checks that we undertake on the costs that are incurred by partners and submitted in their claims. To that extent, we've put forward a template. We've worked this through with some examples, provided that to internal audit. We've had some positive feedback, and we're just trying to give them some further assurance in terms of the nature and extent of the checks that we do. So again, I'm confident that we'll have this one implemented by the end of the year.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Buse. The recommendations on page 37 ask us to note the recommended actions within the internal audit report have been accepted as implemented by the internal audit in the following areas: delegated powers, mitigation of variances, project closure report and progress reporting. And the second recommendation is to note the ongoing work to gain implemented status in the following areas: funding agreements and expenditure records, as Mr. Buse has set out. My question to the Joint Committee is, are you assured that those actions are being implemented appropriately, and would it be your intention to sign this off and agree that we're assured? So over to you, colleagues, and take any questions. Councillor Owen, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we've come to a conclusion that it needs signing off. I think it's now down to the two council audit committees to continue. But I think Mr. Buse has given us the assurance that he believes that they're likely to be signed off pretty quickly. So in my view, I'm happy to say that we actually just sign them off and leave it to the two audit committees. And I'm happy to propose that if necessary.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have an opposing view? Councillor Allard.
No opposing view, just wanted to second Councillor Owen and making sure we can sign this off today.
Okay, thank you. Is that the view of everyone? Does anyone have any other views? No. So on that basis then, I take it that the Joint Committee is assured that the recommendations have been and are going to be implemented within the timescales given, and that we're happy to agree that we sign this off and duly note, but also, as I say, agree that this is now signed off. If we can put that in the minute, that would be helpful. Okay, thank you very much. And again, thank you, Mr. Buse and colleagues, for ensuring that the recommendations have been implemented timeously. And thank you for all the work you've done with internal audit. Thank you. Item 9 then on our agenda is the annual report and benefits update for 23-24. That sits on pages 41 to 88. The recommendations are that we note the content of Appendix A, the annual report, which provides a comprehensive overview of the programme and projects and their key achievements for the last year. Note the content of Appendix B, the benefits dashboard, detailing the realisation of benefits across the programme that align to wider regional economic development objectives achieved by utilising partner resources, and endorse these reports for wider publication. Mr. Buse, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Not really a huge amount to add. I think the reports tend to speak for themselves. Really just a case of giving some thanks to partners for their contributions so that we can publish an annual report that outlines the progress that has been made within 23-24. And I think in addition to that, we have this year the project benefits dashboard. Again, this is something that conversations with both government and internal audit, it was felt that we wanted to give more emphasis and transparency around the benefits that are being realised through the deal and the investments that have been made in there. So again, there's a significant amount of information in there, which if endorsed today, will go into the public domain. The other thing I would like to mention, I mentioned thanks to partners for the provision of the information. I think the reports that are before us today, my colleague Gray has done a huge amount of work in pulling these together to make sure that we can get this information into the public domain. So huge thanks to Igel as well.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Colleagues, do you have any comments or questions or observations on the report? Councillor Allard, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Buse, for this report. And you're talking about how we make sure we put that in the public domain. Have we got any ways? We've got some very good slides, and how can we maybe push that a bit further? You know, people do understand what has been achieved so far. Have we got any releases, anything, places where it can be promoted?
In terms of previous years, we've used the Invest Aberdeen website, which has got a dedicated Aberdeen City Region deal space within it. So that's where we've tended to promote this. If there's anywhere else that members want us to use and to utilise for that, I'm more than happy to do so.
think perhaps council
Yep.
websites. I don't know if the one board members have any outlets within their remit, but I think if it would, not everybody would be directed or have the ability to imagine that that's the Invest Aberdeen website is where this sits. So, Ms. Rochester, please.
Thank you. Just to add that this has been discussed quite a lot at the City Region Deal communications group, and we've talked about extracting some of the graphics and the imagery from the report itself, promoting them right across all our partner social media channels and sharing and tagging each other in them accordingly. So there has been discussion at this level. Once this discussion takes place today and it's published on the website, from that point forward, the comms group can take forward promoting some of the headline messages from the annual report, sharing it right across all our platforms.
That's extremely helpful. Thank you very much. Councillor Allard, do you want to come back?
No, very happy with that. Exactly what I'm asking for. So let's make sure that we've got all that at our disposal and we can share the good news.
That's excellent. Thank you. Maybe Mr. Marston could just record that as an action in the minute. That would be very helpful. So on the basis there's no indications, can I ask then that you are content to note the contents of these reports and agree that they should be more widely publicised, as we've heard from Sarah? And that's agreed. Okay, thank you very much indeed. And thank you to everyone for all the work that's gone into producing that report. And it just absolutely demonstrates the breadth of the work that is undertaken on our behalf. So thank you very much, everyone, for that. Item 10 then is the strategic transport appraisal, and that's on page 89 to 96 of your report. The recommendations are to approve the proposals for the progression of a regional cumulative transport appraisal, which is linked to both council's development plan process as part of the Aberdeen sub-area model project line. And note the Director of Nestrans is committed to report back on the completion of the business cases and other relevant milestones in their development. So can I ask please for an officer to present this report? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Stirlings. Paul Finch, for the Strategy Manager at Nestrans. I'll quickly take you through this paper. And just to say that we've got 3 transport papers in a run now. So item 10 talks about strategic transport appraisal, and that's about the development of business cases for future implementation. Alan, my colleague from Aberdeen City, will take item 11, which will be about external links. And then at item 12, we'll be considering the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding projects, which are the Transport Scotland rail and road upgrade projects on there. But focusing on item 10, strategic transport appraisal, there are 7 sub-projects within this heading. The paper gives a brief summary of the progression of where we are on those 7 projects. I'll briefly talk through them. The Aberdeen sub-area model, which is the regional transport land use model, that is being completed. We are using it on a range of different projects across the region. One element that's come up through discussions with Transport Scotland and the planning process is whether we can utilise that to support the development plan process, which both councils are active on, and to do some more regional strategic modelling on that place. It was felt that this allocation was a perfect home for that, because it is A, regional, and B, helps to unlock various development sites within that local development plan process. So there is a proposal to via some money within the lines of the projects to support that going forward. Varying money from 2 other projects on the line, a mobility hubs project and a regional hydrogen refuelers project, to boost that funding line up to £160,000 over the next 2 years. We continue to make progress on design and appraisal work on the road corridor linking Ellen Peterhead and Fraserburgh as well. We continue to have good conversations with Transport Scotland. We look to complete that appraisal in the springtime, but meantime, because we have the opportunity, we are accelerating the design works for the Tull of Burness and the approaches in that particular area, that linking to development pressures in Mintlaw, but also the investment zone opportunity that is in and around Peterhead at this particular time. And we've been encouraged to do so again by Transport Scotland in that area. Similarly, we've been making good progress on design and business case development for key junctions and approaches to key junctions on the southern end of the Wellington Road corridor. My colleagues Alan and Ross took a report through to the Aberdeen City Council's committee on Wednesday, I believe it was. And again, there was full support for continued development of that stretch of the road network, which sits at the end of the external links project. So again, we're working up the designs, and we believe that through a combination of developer contributions and other opportunities, when that work and that business case work is completed at the end of the city region deal, we'll be able to progress that in an incremental manner to provide those wider regional benefits for the transport network. There's a piece of work we continue to look at, the rail freight terminals review. The work we did in 2023 highlighted how closely linked that project was to the wider Aberdeen to Central Belt Enhancements Programme in terms of freight operating companies' confidence to regain rail freight services into the area. We continue, however, to do some investigations into freight flows around the area so that we can feed into those conversations. The work on regional hydrogen refuelers, we've just recently published some work that Arup did earlier in the year, highlighting the costs and opportunities of developing that. I think, as I've previously reported, the revenue and the capital costs of those sorts of facilities have come out significantly higher than we first believed they would. So it's a case of keeping our eye on that one. We also note that the public sector procurement of some of the hydrogen vehicles might be slower than we also anticipated, just because of the capital constraints we're all under at the moment. What we want to do in that space is actually to consider some of the rapid advancements there's been in electrically powered heavy goods vehicles or larger freight vehicles as well. We see in the region now how Ember have been successfully deploying electric coaches between Aberdeen and Edinburgh as well. And we're keen to explore whether that could be a complementary technology as we decarbonise or support to decarbonise that freight sector. We continue to work in the area of mobility hubs. One particular project which is developing really nicely is a project in Ballater, where there is an opportunity to help move around some bus stops. There is an opportunity to reimagine the public square in that area. And we also note the ongoing pressures in the summertime in Ballater due to the success of the cruise ports and the tour buses in that particular area. And we are investigating with Aberdeenshire Council and the Cairngorms National Park design options in that area, and the City Region Deal money is funding that in partnership with those other bodies. We continue to look at other opportunities up in Huntly, but also across the city for smaller mobility hubs, and we're working out how they can be deployed in the next couple of years. Colleagues in Aberdeen City Council continue also to invest in the progression of the business case work for Aberdeen Rapid Transit. We're hoping to bring a strategic business case. Hopefully the strategic business case will be completed towards the end of this financial year, and in turn we will take this to the City Region Deal subsequent to that. One final element was when we brought a strategic transport appraisal report to the board in February, we indicated the desirability, and it was supported by the board, of allocating some of the strategic transport appraisal funding and that which would be coming from the councils as a risk allocation for any future cost issues on the external links project. We identified in February the potential of wiring 1.15 million of funding across from the strategic transport appraisal funding to that project to provide that risk confidence of that to help ensure project delivery in the instance that the business case for external links came out with higher costs than we were anticipating due to cost inflation issues. We continue to have discussions with the relative legal and governance processes on that, which would be a material change to the deal agreements. And we will come back to the board with the proposals for that. But that is likely to include require separate reporting to council committees, although we are still working the pathway out for that at the moment. So that's the overview of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions or queries. Thank you very much, Chair.
No, many thanks, Mr. Finch, for that very comprehensive overview. And I'll just ask members now if you have any comments or questions for Mr. Finch on this report. I'm just wondering, you did say in part of your presentation about funding from both councils for an aspect of this. I just wonder if anyone has any feedback on that.
I would say that the programme as a whole is £7 million, £1 million each coming from the two local authorities. Up to now, we have been drawing down the majority of the funding from the two governments. So we make maximum use of that external funding opportunity. So that's what we have been doing. We just realised February that there was that there may be that opportunity to think about the whole transport portfolio and the use of the funding within that area. But we need to obviously go through the governance processes to support the decisions that the board has previously supported in February this year.
I think that's the point I was trying to get to, and given members the opportunity to come back to you on that. Councillor Owen, thank you.
That was going to be exactly my point, and I was just about to take my hand down when you actually invited me in.
Please come away. Is there anything you'd want to add?
No, I just think it's the governance route that's actually fairly key, and I think that's kind of that we just need that kind of clarity so that we know exactly where we stand. And yeah, I'm assured now, but I wouldn't have put my hand up if you would have come in just a wee bit beforehand.
No, that's fine. Thank you for that. And what's the process for that, Mr. Finch? To get that check back on governance?
The current understanding is that we would probably prepare reports to the two nominated council committees in the same way as we did in 2016 when we were getting approvals for the business cases for some aspects of the deal. I recall going to the Infrastructure Services Committee at that point, and I think there was a similar report that went to the City Council when we set up the deal in terms of those approvals from those particular committees. So my understanding from the current conversations we're having with legal and governments that would be the route that we would take. I think we have clarity at this from the City Council point of view of that particular route. I think there's still discussions within the Aberdeenshire Council just to work out what that committee route would be. But it would be the Infrastructure Services Committee or full council. We're still to determine that in terms of the standing orders, Councillor Sterling, as we go forward. But we have time to do this, and I guess we're just taking the time to get it correct as to make sure that we follow the processes correctly.
No, that's excellent. Thank you very much for that detailed explanation of how it's going to work. But I just wonder, I would like to be guided, please. Do we need joint committee approval to undertake that process, and also to discuss with government the change of the business case? Because what we agreed is now being proposed to be slightly different. So do we need the joint committee's approval to follow that process? Sorry, can we make sure everybody's on mute? Yep. Sorry, I'm not sure who was coming in at the back there, but so can officers guide us, please? Do we need to get a recommendation for a joint committee to agree that process as set out by Mr. Finch? Mr. Buse.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of the process, I think Mr. Finch has laid out the process come back to the councils. I think everyone's fine with that. It's just a question in terms of what needs to come back to the joint committee. I think at this moment in time. I wouldn't know that for sure. That's part of the conversation that we're having with legal, is to make sure that we understand that governance route in full. Probably the suggestion I might make is that we update members of the Joint Committee of what that guidance is as soon as it's been confirmed by legal services and both local authorities. And if a report does then need to come back to Joint Committee, we would bring one back to Joint Committee. And as Mr. Finch said, we would be updating the Joint Committee in any case.
But I think it might be helpful then to minute that the Joint Committee have considered that option for the process and have endorsed. I think we need to record something in the minute that actually reflects that we are supportive of that process going forward. And again, it's a change to the business plan. So we need to find a form of words to reflect that we've considered it and agreed it, that process would follow. I just wonder, Mrs. Beattie, in terms of from your perspective, are you content with that approach?
I think you make a really good point, Chair. We would want to check in with both governments ahead of any decision making. I don't think we can just leave it to the councils. So in conjunction with Mr. McCarry and Mr. Buse, we will take that to both governments, make sure they're happy with the changes that are being proposed, and then we will go through both councils. I trust that's okay with committee.
Well, again, if we could just formalise that and add that as an additional recommendation, Mr. Marson can capture from the recording what you've just said, Mrs. Beattie. And if we can add that as a recommendation, if members are content with that, it then records our endorsement of that position. So that'll be an additional recommendation for the minute. Agreed? I don't hear anything else. Okay, that's fine. So thank you very much for that. And thank you, Mr. Finch, for taking us through that. I think we've concluded and in a satisfactory way. So thank you for that. Okay, so that is agreed. Item 11 on the pack is the external transportation links to Aberdeen South Harbour. And this is a progress report and runs from pages 97 to 100. So can I just, is it Mr. Mackay? Is it you going to take us through this? Thank you very much.
Morning, Committee. Thank you, Chair. I'll just give a very brief intro to the report. It is just a brief project update covering the number of different work tasks that are ongoing through the development of the South Harbour Link Road. What I would just want to update further for item 3.1, which is a change from when the report went to print, around what was ongoing conversations around the updated outline business case with Transport Scotland, who have been doing the review on behalf of the government. And it is only to say that conversation has now concluded successfully. We believe that all the points are now addressed with them, and that should permit the recirculation and approval with the government in the near future. So just wanted to highlight that further progress on that item. With regards to the rest there, as presented in the report, we continue to make headway across all different aspects of the project, and we are looking into a good position for the new year. But happy to take questions if there are any today.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mackay. Any questions? Councillor Yule, please.
Thanks. Can I put the table of page 100? The terminal communication. Apart from
Sorry, it's really, really difficult to hear you. You've got a lot of background noise.
Yeah, I have. I'll just leave it.
Do you want to type? Do you want to put something in the chat?
Okay, I'll just leave it.
Sorry about that. We just can't hear you. Any other questions, comments, observations on this one? No? We content? The recommendations are to note the ongoing discussions. Mr. Mackay has updated us on that. Note the progress of the scheme with regard to the ongoing detailed design work, planning application and the progression of the compulsory purchase order, and note the commencement of discussions on utilising one of the government's construction frameworks as an alternative procurement route for the two-stage restricted procedure previously envisaged. Can we agree those recommendations? Don't see anyone saying anything other than that. Those are agreed. Thank you very much, Mr. Mackay. Item 12 on the agenda is the Scottish Government Additional Investment Update for transport projects. And again, Mr. Finch, I think you're taking us through this.
Yeah, I'll do a brief introduction. We do have officers from Transport Scotland joining the call as well, who can then take additional there might be difficult distinct questions on those two distinct projects as well. The city region deal is supported by two major projects running alongside the city region deal programme, one of which is the rail upgrade Aberdeen to Central Belt, and the other one is the improvement to Lawrence Kirk Junction. At the May committee, we provided an update on the Aberdeen to Central Belt improvement programme, and we included within that agenda pack the correspondence that we've been having with the Transport Minister, because in February of that year, it was announced that the funding for the project, although was committed, was the timescales were under review. Since then, the government has confirmed that despite design work continuing at least into the next financial year, the progression of the project, the timescales can now not be confirmed as to being the completion aligning with the completion of the city region deal. So that is a particular issue to highlight to the board in terms of the progression of that MOU project. That project is also tying in with wider projects in terms of the electrification and new rolling stock procurement. The other project relates to Aberdeen to Lawrence, the Lawrence Kirk Junction upgrade, and the highlight from that is that all objections have now been removed on that particular project, and there is an opportunity now to continue to progress to the next stage, which would be confirmation of the republication of orders and to the next stage of that statutory process, again being managed by Transport Scotland. So they're two high-level things, but we obviously have officers from Transport Scotland who can provide further detail on both of those projects. Thank you very much, Chair.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Do any of our colleagues from Transport Scotland wish to comment at this point?
I'd be happy to, Chair, on Lawrence Kirk, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you very much. That would be helpful.
Sorry, it's Sandy Jameson from Transport Scotland and Major Projects here. Thanks, Paul, for that update. I think just as Paul recognised there, I think the last time I had the opportunity to attend the joint committee meeting, it was to announce that we had worked closely with Aberdeenshire Council and resolved the technical objection to the scheme after the closing of OTL Bridge. So, as Paul rightly said, since then, there's been extensive engagement with the sole remaining objector to the scheme, such that they were able to remove the objection, which, as Paul correctly said, means that there's no remaining objection to the original orders for the scheme. Just to make the joint committee aware that does represent a significant milestone for the scheme itself, but as the committee is aware from our last outing, due to the closure of Oty Hill Bridge, it means that the scheme does require additional draft supplementary orders to be published to allow it to be deliverable. So it was to provide the committee with an update today to ensure that Transport Scotland's project team are progressing the work as a priority to prepare that necessary material for the statutory orders, and they'll be brought forward in due course. So again, just to reiterate that delivery timescales for the scheme are obviously subject to getting the necessary statutory powers to be able to do that. And as I say, the project team are working as a priority to get that material ready. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That's a very welcome update, and certainly we'd all be very supportive of that moving as quickly as possible within the parameters that you've set out. So that's really good news. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Colleagues, do you have any questions for...
I could give you a quick update on the real
Sorry,
project,
Mr.
if you would like.
Camelford. Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, design works are continuing, particularly this financial year. We're focusing on the Dundee and Aberdeen areas, with Montrose and Arbroath to follow next financial year. We've also decided to move the location of the loop from the Magdalen Green area in Dundee further east to the other side of the Riverside Approach Bridge, where the existing rail sidings are. So that's a change that has occurred in the last 6 months or so. Just turning to the other projects that linked to the service improvements, contracts are underway with National Grid for new feeder stations at Drumlithy and at Dundee itself to support future electrification. You may have also seen in September the Transport Minister announced the start of a procurement competition to replace the HSD fleet of trains that operate on the route between Aberdeen and the Central Belt. And lastly, I would just flag that the line speed increases in the Barnhill area will be coming online in December 24, so next month.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, that's a very helpful update. Again, I'll just invite folks to ask any questions or make any comments.
Can I make a comment,
Yes,
please?
of course, Sir Ian, yes.
In terms of what was said about 5 minutes ago as to whether or not the proposals have got approval, where are we on that? Because I kind of heard a mixed talk there. Have we got definite approval to go ahead?
So Ian, sorry, Chair, is that in relation to the Lawrencekirk junction improvements?
I think that was the ones you mentioned. That was the ones you were mentioning. Yes.
Yes, yeah. I think just to probably provide a bit more information. So the original orders that were promoted for the scheme now have no objections to them. So that would allow the process to proceed on that basis if it were not for the fact that Oty Hill Bridge has been closed, which requires the draft supplementary orders to be published now for consultation. To explain a bit more on that is the scheme requires the new solution at Oty Hill Bridge to be in place to allow it to be delivered. Again, because the solution at Oty Hill requires land to be taken from private individuals, we have to follow the statutory process, which is publishing the necessary orders for that, which includes a compulsory purchase order for land in draft form to give the public the opportunity to raise objection to that if necessary before we can obviously progress to securing the powers to deliver the scheme. Just to give the committee assurance that the project team is engaging effectively with all those that are directly affected by the new draft supplementary orders at Oty Hill Bridge, which includes Network Rail, obviously, because it involves a rail crossing, to try and minimise any concerns or objections that may result from those draft orders. But just to, again, assure the committee that the project team are working at pace to try and secure the powers to be able this scheme to be delivered.
Are we reasonably confident we will get it delivered?
I would certainly hope so. And I know I have to always put the caveat in about we require the statutory powers to be able to do the scheme before we can take it forward into the delivery phase. But certainly, as I say, the team have worked closely with Aberdeenshire Council in relation to the scheme and will continue to do so through this, and also have directly engaged and will continue to engage with all the landowners that are directly affected by, this much needed improvement scheme.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
Once you have everything in place, what would be the delivery timetable roughly? I know, don't want to hold you to it.
Yes, no, I think that's probably the best thing to say. And before I would be able to give a date, I think the important part for all our major projects that we do at Transport Scotland is to secure the powers, to get the statutory powers to be able to do that. Then after the next part of that, we'll be looking in detail at the procurement and delivery, the best way and the quickest, most effective way to deliver that. So that piece of work still has to take place, I'm afraid. So I would say that probably at this time it's a wee bit too early to say that, but I can assure you the team will be progressing at pace, Chair.
That's fair enough, and thank you for that.
No problem.
I don't want any hairs running that you can't cut.
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. One last call, please, colleagues, if there's anything else you would like to ask of our three colleagues. No other indications? No, nothing. So thank you very much, all of you, for those updates. And I have referred to the recommendations, so we can agree those, please, and note the update in the report. That's agreed. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the public session. So we'll now pause and we'll have the recording switched off. And thank you very much for your attendance and your interest in the business today. And we'll now just take a moment and we'll